And we're reading Love Kills by Hank Harrison. We are now up to chapter 14, which is from Salem. Hell is here. Salem, Massachusetts. Cotton Mather. Another decade blew by. Child loss wounds never heal. But if you're healthy, you keep going. I moved back and forth between Marion County and Santa Cruz. After coming back from Vancouver, I invested my money, hit it semi-big on some stock, blew that, then got another insider tip, and I felt like I had messed up my life. Out of the clear blue sky, I got a letter from Frank Rodriguez telling me that Courtney wanted to contact me. He gave me her address, so I wrote her and she wrote back. That's when I found out that she was damaged teeny bopper. All the time I thought that she was being treated well, she wasn't. Courtney became a throwaway child at the age of 10, a disposable unit, a single-use razor blade. Her mother was stymied by her behavior, but instead of sending her back to her mom, my sister or me, Linda just dumped her on the system like the bag of detritus in a landfill. I didn't know any of this. I was pissed off, but I was also the sense that this might be my chance to bust a move. As mentioned earlier, the geese of God schooled Linda and her clique, and her cliche, so Courtney had a Dominican Catholicism jammed down her throat. She didn't see any place to soothe her lost self-esteem, and yet, in the odd trajectory, she was attracted to the occult, the feminist power of Wicca, Est, and the self-help cults. She didn't know about the Grail, the Hemeritic Magi, the Mishavas, or the charismatic good deeds. She knew how to do God's work. But she knew how to do God's work. In any case, Courtney found herself in foster homes, juvenile halls a bunch of times. That's where I found her. The juvenile hall in Salem, Oregon. Odd coincidence in the town's names. And the nuns in her deep background taught her more violence, more self-flagellation, and how to play the role of the martyr better than any Nintendo game. She did, however, find the church, the grand cathedral of rock and roll and religion, and tailor-made for the alienated and disenfranchised kids of the era. Her mother was a charismatic Catholic who believed in all the good stuff and saw nothing of the paradoxical about divorcing and remarrying or adopting or rejecting children as the number of bedrooms allowed. She was no theological paradox between the Cateism and the firewalking. Linda was also brilliant, was also a dilettante by the exposure. Courtney knew the oracles of I Ching, Kabbalah, and the Tarot, and no deep appreciation for them or their auguries. She stole a t-shirt one day and got caught. After that, she got roasted several times for vandalism and dumpster tagging. But her on and off in Portland brought out another aspect to Courtney's personality, the Celtic warrior, the gene starting to show its face. I knew Courtney was smart, but now she was showing signs of true, albeit deformed brilliance. As mentioned earlier, Courtney was raised in the bookish world. Her mother had cultivated an amazing library loaded with poems of E.C. Cummings and the novels of Carson McCullers. In Oregon, Linda owned dozens of books on the criminology, forensics, and the crime scene detection, all of which, according to my sources, Courtney memorized. This is extremely important in relation if you want to understand the Cobain case. My library featured the complete works of C.G. Jung, books on the archaeology and the megaliths of the Western Europe. I was also researching Shakespearean theories and the Oxfordian type Zenstratus, as though for them to be unlike her mother, who preferred arts and crafts. I papered my walls with real Picasso's, Dalís, and the works of the Dutch symbolist school. I collected the Santa Cruz Datist, Futsi Nutzel, and Henry Humble because they were my friends, and the artists themselves often came to visit. In addition, after 1982, I had inherited Jerry Garcia's originals and the art of the Haight-Ashbury artists such as Wes Wilson, Rick Griffin, Elton Kelly, Victor Moscow, and the Mouse. I also displayed posters of Klimt and Mucha and owned signed prints from the cartoon pop of Roy Lichtenstein. The soft white writing of Mark Tobey was always hanging in the foyer next to the real Frank Lloyd Wright building plan. Courtney never walked on the bare floors. She knew the difference between the Cyric and Boric, and more importantly, she knew to feel the silk cashmere against her skin, and she knew the sounds of the finest music amplified by the Macintosh 250 piped through the JBL speakers. However, when she came loose on unsuspecting Portland, Courtney became a shit disturber. By the time I found the Hillcrest, she had a whole new place organized. She was the erudite, classy, relative to the scene. She had recruited fellow inmates as servants to do her laundry and household chores, but she was not spiritually enlightened. She was fast becoming the queen bee who lorded her familia, standing over less the fortunate. She had no concept of noblesse oblige, and she had tantrums were so hysterical that her roomies routinely let her win Scrabble. On the first visit I drove up to Salem from Marion, and Frank was nowhere to be seen, but he did his job. He wrote the first letter. When I showed up to Hillcrest, I was taken around for the macabre tour of the facilities. When kids got out of line, the wardens of Salem, largest schools, used to belt down the cots for timeouts. I know because the head counselor, a pecker pole named Bill Clish, showed me those timeout cells with great enthusiasm, even though it was far to be a so kind of treatment as the latest modern in penology. I guess I failed to exhibit the appropriate state of glee. I asked him if he had ever seen the torture chambers in the castle of Ghent, but it went right over his head. I knew he wasn't happy with me because he invited me to the church the next morning. I told him I was Jewish, and at the end of him, I lied, of course. My Jewish friends forgive me, but it worked. The Nazi gave up on the tour. I thought, this is odd. Here's a man, an authority figure, who only smokes like a chimney but allows his inmates, even a 13-year-olds, to smoke. As long as they went with some kind of fundamentalist church, their souls would be so saved. Wrong. Not my kid. I could see Courtney was running a pimp string, and Bill Clish had no way to control it except for to allow cigarettes for good behavior. In Hillcrest, cigarettes were equal to love. Wherever she is, Courtney is still some kind of psychotic level, addicted to nicotine. Klein bragged the whole time about how he's reformed. His school was after an hour of repressing my vomit response and listening to Bill propagating on how well the kids waxed the walls. I found an exit on the way out. My salvation came in the form of a charming woman named Billapi Rubio. Mrs. Rubio has concerns about Courtney. Are you Courtney's father? She asked. I answered in the paranoid stare. She laughed. No doubt, worry. Then she asked another question. Are you the same Hank Harrison who wrote those books about the Grateful Dead? Mm-hmm. Well, yes. I could be one of those tie-dye socks. She was the one that came from the Oregon Deadheads, the most rapid kind. The brief conversation gave me an insider on the ward. With Rubio was that on the station Courtney could call me as long as it was collect. We spoke twice a week, and finally I wangled a vacation pass for Courtney. Needless to say, the trailer trash who ran the program at Hillcrest were not happy to see the likes of Courtney, and when the rich beatnik like me showed up in a flashy car, they really freaked out. They were also happy to see the back of her. I felt the sigh of relief coming from the office when I signed the papers. She came to stay with me for the visit, and she stayed for a while longer until she wiggled free and not grown up out of trouble. Of course, demanding that her mother gave some major bread was the part of the process. I had nothing to do with that process. Like a Warhol debutante, Eddie Sedgwick, as soon as she got the cash, started to get into trouble again. Nobody could have stopped her anyway. Rescuing Courtney from Hillcrest wasn't the whole story. That prison was full of kids. Most of them were worth rescuing. Sadly, very few emerged unscathed, and none of them had their parents who could agree and could arrive in a private plane and send them to dozens of red roses. But the whole world was full of paradox, because the exact same world that formed Tanya Harding formed Courtney Love. The only difference being money, childhood enrichment. Maybe it was the rain and the lack of the sunlight. There are several good reasons why you could call it bong water. Courtney sensed I was hurting on the inside, and she refused to listen to any part of my sad story. She was determined to make me pay. She wanted to punish me for abandoning her. She did not know that I told her that I did not abandon her, but I love her, and that she was ripped away from me in a bog Irish court battle. I doubted that she would ever believe me. My first lesson in teen parenting was a quick and painful one. If you think that you're going to get some good vibes out of a broken child, forget it. Courtney refused my review to the tapes and the court documents, evidence that would, I thought, help heal the wounds. I still have the tapes, now transcribed to digital media. In 1978, he plunged and flew her to get her in a semi-permanent stay. It was a chance for me to prove myself, and I had parenting skills. 2 days after she moved in, she used clothes. I bought her a dress-up like Edie Sedgwick, cigarette in hand, wine in the other. I tried to probe my memory to see if she recalled any fragments of the days when I and her were allowed to be happy. She seemed to remember little sparks. The day we were out in the rowboat at Stowe Lake at Golden Gate Park when she was 3. She wore a sailor suit, one of the hats with the swallowtail ribbons in the back, and the gulls were gliding on the updrafts around the dory as I rowed. She pointed to the sky excitedly and screamed, "Bird, Daddy! Give me a bird!" So I reached up and grabbed one of the legs and gave it to her. Nobody believes the story, but it's true. My Zen training taught me to be very quick, and Courtney got very excited because she wanted to keep the seagull. But she also realized something deeper. She sensed she was quick, too. Very athletic, like my Olympian father. I tried to take the bird away from her, but she wouldn't let go. I said, "It has to be free to fly, honey." Courtney wasn't having any of it. It was hers. She began to pout. The gull had to be serene up to that point, but began to flap madly. The magic act was about to end in a tussle with the wild scavenger. Big Sucker, too, finally had to let go. I asked her to make a wish, then blow on the bird and make it fly away. She did, and the bird obliged, and she was sad after that. The events of the story of our life together, serene, then savage, athletic, animalistic, and finally dreamlike. She didn't want to go back to Linda's house, and I guess she threw a major tantrum when she got home. Courtney told Linda I caught a bird. Linda thought I was nuts and began to distance her from me. Even more than her divorce, Linda's maids and waiting assumed that I gave a kid acid. It was all over that. It was all over after that. The reality of it got pounded by people who could not believe a father could actually catch a seagull barehanded. But I have psychic powers, and I still do stuff like that, and did stuff like that. I couldn't catch a fly with chopsticks like Miffy Redbeard, but I was working on it.